I need to be honest with you about something that has been keeping me up at night. We are looking at 2026, and the data I have been tracking for the past 8 months is pointing to something serious. Major food producers are already quietly shifting their production lines. And while most preppers are busy arguing online about the best freeze-dried brands, there are 17 foods that the smartest preppers are stockpiling right now, but refusing to talk about publicly. And I am going to tell you exactly what they are and why. If you want more content like this that actually prepares you for what is coming, hit that subscribe button right now, because I am not holding back today. Food number 1 is pemmican bars. Let me start with something that changed everything for me last year. Pemmican bars. Now, most people have heard the word pemmican, but have never actually tried it or understand why it is absolutely critical for what is coming. Pemmican is a combination of dried meat, rendered fat, and sometimes dried berries, all compressed into dense bars. Native Americans and fur trappers survived entire winters on this stuff. We are talking months of sub-zero temperatures with only pemmican as their primary food source. Here is what makes it insane for preppers. The shelf life is practically unlimited. Food number 2 is fermented miso paste. Number 2 is something I discovered by accident, and now I cannot believe more preppers do not talk about it. Fermented miso paste. Yes, the stuff you find in miso soup at Japanese restaurants. But stay with me, because this is not about making soup. Miso paste is fermented soybeans, and the fermentation process is what makes it incredible for long-term storage. Traditional miso paste, when kept sealed, lasts for years. I have got jars in my pantry that are 3 years old, and they are still perfect. But here is what makes miso an absolute game changer. It is a living food packed with probiotics. In a long-term survival situation, your gut health is going to take a beating. You are eating different foods, you are stressed, and your immune system is compromised. Food number 3 is dried lentils, red specifically. Okay, number 3 might sound obvious at first, but hear me out because most preppers are doing this wrong. Dried lentils, specifically red lentils. Now, I know a lot of preppers stock beans, but red lentils are in a completely different category. First, the cooking time. Beans take hours to cook and require soaking. Red lentils cook in 15 minutes with no soaking required. In a situation where fuel is limited, this is absolutely massive. I learned this lesson during a week-long power outage. I was using a small camping stove with limited fuel. Cooking beans was eating through my fuel supply fast. Then I switched to red lentils, and suddenly 1 canister of fuel lasted 3 times longer. But here is what makes red lentils nutritionally superior for preppers. Food number 4 is blackstrap molasses. Number 4 is one of those foods that old-timers knew about, but modern preppers have completely forgotten. Blackstrap molasses. Not regular molasses, specifically blackstrap. This is the thick, dark syrup that is left over after sugar cane is processed 3 times, and it is an absolute nutritional powerhouse. Here is what blew my mind when I started researching this. 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses contains 20% of your daily iron, 10% of your daily calcium, and significant amounts of magnesium, potassium, and vitamin B6. We are talking about a sweetener that actually provides real nutrition. Compare that to sugar or honey, which are basically just empty calories. The iron content alone makes this critical for preppers. Iron deficiency causes fatigue, weakness, and brain fog. Exactly what you cannot afford during a crisis. and most survival foods are dangerously low in iron. But here's where blackstrap molasses becomes genius. Food number 5 is canned sardines in olive oil. All right, number 5 is going to gross some people out, but I do not care because the data is undeniable. Canned sardines in olive oil. Yes, the little fish that most Americans refuse to eat, but listen to why this is non-negotiable for serious preppers. Sardines are one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. A single can provides over 20 grams of complete protein, massive amounts of omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, calcium from the bones, and vitamin B12. And the shelf life is incredible. Canned sardines last 5 to 7 years, and some people argue they actually taste better as they age because the flavors mellow. Here is what makes sardines absolutely critical. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential for brain function, reducing inflammation, and supporting heart health. And in a survival situation, inflammation is your enemy. Stress causes inflammation. Poor sleep causes inflammation. And inflammation makes every food number 6 is tahini. Number 6 is one of those foods that hides in plain sight. Tahini, which is ground sesame seed paste. You find it in the international aisle, and most people walk right past it. Big mistake. Here is why tahini is a prepper's secret weapon. Sesame seeds are about 50% fat, which means tahini is incredibly calorie dense. 2 tablespoons contain about 180 calories, and those are healthy, plant-based fats that your body needs. But the shelf life is what makes this interesting. Unopened tahini lasts about 2 years. Once opened, if you store it in the fridge, it lasts another year. But here is the trick. If you buy tahini in glass jars and store them in a cool, dark place, they last even longer. The nutritional profile is wild. Tahini is loaded with calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc. One serving gives you more calcium than a glass of milk. For preppers who cannot store dairy, this is critical. I discovered tahini's value during a month-long camping trip. I brought a jar of tahini and used it every day. Mixed into oatmeal for creaminess, stirred into soups for richness, spread on flatbread for a quick meal. That one jar transformed every meal. Here is a recipe that saved me during a power outage. Mix tahini with a little water, lemon juice if you have it, and salt. You have just made a creamy sauce that makes rice, beans, or vegetables taste incredible. The cost is reasonable. A large jar of tahini runs about $9. That is 20 to 30 servings depending on how much you use. I keep 6 jars in my stockpile, rotated regularly. And here is something cool. You can make tahini at home if you have sesame seeds and a food processor. Toast the seeds, blend them, and you have got fresh tahini that you made yourself. Most preppers ignore tahini because it seems too fancy or unfamiliar, but in reality, it is one of the best shelf-stable fat sources you can store. Food number 7 is amaranth grain. Number 7 is where things get really interesting. Amaranth grain. Most Americans have never heard of this, which is exactly why it belongs in your stockpile. Amaranth is an ancient grain that the Aztecs used as a staple food. It is tiny, about the size of a poppy seed, but the nutrition is off the charts. Here is what makes amaranth special. It is a complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids. Very few plant foods can claim that. It is also gluten-free, high in iron, magnesium, and phosphorus. The shelf life is excellent. Stored in airtight containers, amaranth lasts 5 to 10 years. I have got containers that are 3 years old, and the grain is still perfect. Here is how you cook it. Use a 3-to-1 water to grain ratio. Bring it to a boil, then simmer for 20 minutes. It becomes this slightly sticky, porridge-like texture that is incredibly filling. But here is the versatility. You can pop amaranth like popcorn. Heat a dry pan, toss in the grains, and they pop into tiny, crunchy puffs. My kids love this as a snack, and it is way healthier than actual popcorn. You can also grind amaranth into flour for baking. Mix it with wheat flour for protein-boosted bread, or use it to thicken soups and stews. Last year, during a 2-week scenario, I made amaranth porridge every morning. 1 cup of cooked amaranth kept me full until mid-afternoon. The satiety factor is real. The cost is low. A 1-pound bag costs about $5 and makes multiple meals. I keep 20 pounds in my storage, which is enough for months of breakfasts. Here is why amaranth is a smart prep. Almost nobody knows about it, so it never gets panic bought. I walked into my local health food store during the last shortage, and the amaranth section was completely untouched while everything else was cleared out. It is also one of the most sustainable crops to grow. If you are thinking long-term and want to start gardening, amaranth is incredibly easy to grow and produces huge yields. For preppers who want to move beyond just storing food and start producing it, amaranth is the bridge. Food number 8 is palm sugar. Number 8 is something I picked up from a friend who spent years in Southeast Asia. Palm sugar, also called coconut sugar. This is not regular white sugar. Palm sugar is made from the sap of palm trees and has been used for thousands of years. Here is why it matters for preppers. First, the glycemic index is lower than regular sugar, which means it does not spike your blood sugar as hard. In a stressful survival situation, blood sugar crashes lead to poor decisions and fatigue. Palm sugar gives you steady energy. But the shelf life is the real story. Palm sugar, when kept dry, lasts indefinitely. It might harden into a block over time, but you just break off a chunk and use it. I have got palm sugar that is over 2 years old, and it is fine. The flavor is incredible. It has got this deep caramel-like taste that makes even bland food interesting. I use it in coffee, in oatmeal, and in baking. Here is a survival recipe that became a family favorite. Cook rice, then stir in a spoonful of palm sugar and a pinch of salt. It becomes this sweet, comforting dish that feels like dessert, but is actually filling and provides energy. The mineral content is also notable. Palm sugar contains small amounts of iron, zinc, and potassium. It is not a ton, but it is more than you get from white sugar, which has zero nutrition. The cost is decent. A large block of palm sugar costs about $7. That is months of use. I keep 3 blocks in my pantry at all times. And here is the psychological factor. In a long-term crisis, morale is critical. Having something sweet that is not just pure processed sugar makes a huge difference. Palm sugar feels like a treat, and that matters when everything else is hard. Most preppers never think about storing quality sweeteners. They just assume they will do without, or they stock white sugar. But palm sugar gives you a better option that lasts just as long and provides more nutrition. Food number 9 is buckwheat. All right. Number 9 is a grain that is not actually a grain, and that is what makes it perfect for preppers. Buckwheat. Despite the name, buckwheat is not related to wheat at all. It is actually a seed, which means it is naturally gluten-free. Here is what makes buckwheat a prepper superfood. It is loaded with protein, about 13 grams per cup cooked. It is high in fiber, which keeps your digestive system working when you are eating emergency food. And it contains all 8 essential amino acids. The shelf life is solid. Buckwheat groats, which are the hulled seeds, last about 2 to 3 years in a cool, dry place. If you vacuum seal them with oxygen absorbers, they last much longer. But here's the genius part. Buckwheat cooks fast, about 15 minutes. Compare that to beans or wheat berries that take hours. When fuel is limited, cooking speed matters. I learned to love buckwheat during a winter power outage. I cooked it on my camp stove, added a little butter and salt, and it was incredibly satisfying. The nutty, earthy flavor is way more interesting than plain rice. Here is the versatility. You can eat buckwheat as a porridge for breakfast. You can use it as a side dish like rice. You can grind it into flour for pancakes or bread. And you can even sprout it for fresh greens in winter. The cost is low. A 2-pound bag costs about $6. That is 15 to 20 servings of high-protein meals. I keep 25 pounds in my storage, rotated regularly. Buckwheat is also incredibly hardy as a crop. If you are planning to grow your own food, buckwheat is one of the easiest grains to cultivate. It grows in poor soil, matures in just 10 weeks, and requires almost no maintenance. For preppers thinking long-term sustainability, buckwheat is essential. And here is the kicker. Most Americans have never eaten buckwheat, which means it never gets panic bought. During shortages, buckwheat sits untouched on shelves. Food number 10 is canned pumpkin. Number 10 is so simple that most preppers overlook it completely. Canned pumpkin, plain, not pie filling, just pure pumpkin puree. Here is why this is brilliant. Canned pumpkin is loaded with vitamin A, fiber, and potassium. 1 cup provides over 200% of your daily vitamin A, which is critical for immune function and vision. The shelf life is excellent. Canned pumpkin lasts 3 to 5 years easily. I've got cans that are 3 years old, and they are still perfect. But here is what makes canned pumpkin genius for preppers. The versatility is insane. You can use it in soups for creaminess and nutrition. You can mix it into oatmeal or pancakes. You can even eat it straight if you are desperate. It is filling, nutritious, and requires zero preparation. Last fall, during a week-long power outage, I made pumpkin soup on my camp stove. 1 can of pumpkin, some broth, a little cinnamon, and salt. It was one of the best meals we had all week. The kids loved it, and it provided serious nutrition. Here is a recipe that became a staple. Mix canned pumpkin with cooked oatmeal and a spoonful of maple syrup. It tastes like pumpkin pie for breakfast and keeps you full for hours. The fiber content is what makes this really valuable. In a survival situation where you're eating a lot of simple carbs like rice, your digestion suffers. Fiber from pumpkin keeps everything moving. The cost is dirt cheap. Cans go on sale for about $1 each around Thanksgiving. I buy 30 cans every November and store them. That is 30 nutrition-packed meals for $30. And here is the psychological benefit. Pumpkin tastes like fall, like comfort, like home. In a stressful situation, familiar flavors provide emotional stability. That is not something preppers talk about, but it is real. Most preppers ignore canned pumpkin because it seems boring or too normal. That is exactly why it will still be available when everything else is gone. Food number 11 is dried mushrooms. Number 11 is a food that changed my entire approach to flavor in a stockpile. Dried mushrooms, specifically shiitake or porcini. These are not the canned mushrooms you find at the grocery store. I am talking about fully dried, concentrated mushrooms. Here is what makes them incredible. Dried mushrooms are packed with umami. that savory, meaty flavor that makes food taste rich and satisfying. In a survival situation where you are eating bland rice and beans, umami is everything, but the nutrition is serious. Shiitake mushrooms contain compounds that boost immune function. They are high in B vitamins, selenium, and copper, and they provide vitamin D, which is rare in plant foods. The shelf life is excellent. Dried mushrooms when stored in airtight containers last year's. I have got mushrooms that are over 2 years old and they rehydrate perfectly. Food number 12 is vinegar, specifically apple cider. Number 12 is something that old school homesteaders understood, but modern preppers forget. Vinegar, specifically raw apple cider vinegar with the mother. This is not just for salad dressing. Vinegar is a preservation tool, a cleaning agent, and a health supplement all in one. Here is the shelf life. Vinegar lasts indefinitely. It literally does not go bad. I have got bottles that are years old, and they are fine. The acidity prevents any bacterial growth. But here is why vinegar is critical for preppers. You can use it to preserve food. Pickling vegetables extends their life by months. In a situation where fresh food is scarce, pickling is essential. You can use vinegar for cleaning and disinfecting. In a grid-down scenario, commercial cleaners run out fast. Vinegar cleans almost everything. And apple cider vinegar has health benefits. It helps with digestion, balances blood sugar, and provides trace minerals. Last year, I pickled 20 pounds of cucumbers and carrots using apple cider vinegar. Those jars lasted 6 months and provided fresh, crunchy vegetables all winter when nothing fresh was available. Here is a survival tip. If your water source is questionable, adding a tablespoon of vinegar per gallon helps kill some bacteria. It is not a replacement for proper water filtration, but it is an extra layer of safety. The cost is low. A large bottle of raw apple cider vinegar costs about $8. That is months of use. I keep 6 bottles in my storage at all times. And here is the versatility. You can use vinegar in cooking, in cleaning, in preserving, and even in first aid for minor skin issues. Most preppers think of vinegar as just a condiment, but it is actually a multi-purpose survival tool that lasts forever. Food number 13 is masa harina. Number 13 is one of those foods that makes you realize how smart traditional cultures were. Masa harina, which is corn flour treated with lime. This is not the same as cornmeal. Masa harina is nixtamalized, which means the corn was soaked in an alkaline solution. Here is why that matters. Nixtamalization unlocks nutrients in corn that are otherwise unavailable. It increases calcium, makes niacin absorbable, and improves protein quality. The Mayans figured this out thousands of years ago. Without nixtamalization, people who live on corn develop pellagra, a serious disease. With it, corn becomes a complete food. The shelf life is solid. Masa harina lasts about 2 years in a cool, dry place. Vacuum sealed with oxygen absorbers, it lasts much longer. Here is the genius part. Masa harina is incredibly versatile. You can make tortillas, tamales, pupusas, or use it as a thickener for soups. Food number 14 is dulse flakes. Number 14 is something I learned from a guy who sailed across the Atlantic on a small boat. Dulse flakes, which is dried seaweed from the North Atlantic. This is different from nori. Dulse has a completely different flavor and nutrition profile. Here is what makes dulse incredible for preppers. It is loaded with iodine, iron, potassium, and trace minerals, and it contains all the essential amino acids, making it a complete protein source. The shelf life is excellent. Dried dulse lasts years when stored in airtight containers. I have got dulse that is over 3 years old, and it is still perfect. Food number 15 is beef gelatin powder. Number 15 is a silent powerhouse that most preppers completely ignore because it is not a survival food. Beef gelatin powder, specifically the unflavored, grass-fed kind. Here is why this belongs in your stockpile right next to your rice and beans. Gelatin is almost pure protein, but it is a specific kind of protein that is critical for long-term health: collagen. In a survival situation, you are going to be moving more, potentially dealing with injuries, and eating a non-optimal diet. Your joints, gut lining, and skin are going to need support. Gelatin is packed with amino acids like glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, which are essential for repairing connective tissues. The shelf life is outstanding. Gelatin powder, kept dry and sealed, lasts for 5 to 10 years easily. I have got canisters that are 4 years old and still dissolve perfectly. But here is the genius utility of gelatin. You can use it as a powerful thickener in soups, stews, and broths, instantly adding a massive protein boost and a rich, satisfying mouthfeel. You can use it to make protein-dense gummies for kids, or to help stretch out valuable supplies of broth. I learned this lesson after a minor sprain while hiking. Doctors and physical therapists all emphasize collagen intake for recovery. Most survival foods are entirely devoid of this. Rice, beans, canned vegetables, they do not have the specific amino acids needed for tendon and ligament repair. Gelatin fills that massive nutritional gap. Here is a simple survival hack. Stir a tablespoon of gelatin powder into hot water, broth, or even coffee. It dissolves easily and provides 10 to 12 grams of bioavailable protein that your body can immediately use for repair and maintenance. The cost is reasonable. A large tub runs about $25 to $30 and contains dozens of servings. I keep 3 large canisters in my storage, which is a year's supply for my family at a maintenance dose. And here is a psychological benefit. You can use gelatin to make a rudimentary dessert. Add a little palm sugar or blackstrap molasses, and you have got a comforting, sweet treat that also happens to be pure protein. It elevates bland emergency meals into something palatable and nutritious. Preppers focus heavily on muscle protein, but often forget the structural protein that holds the body together. Gelatin is the secret weapon for maintaining a functional, injury-resistant body when modern medical care is unavailable. Food number 16 is chicory root. Number 16 is one of those plants that saved entire populations during wartime shortages. Chicory root, specifically the roasted and ground kind, often sold as a coffee substitute. This is not about ditching your coffee. This is about storing a versatile, medicinal, and morale-boosting ingredient. First, the shelf life. Roasted chicory root, when stored in an airtight container, lasts 3 to 5 years and often much longer. I have got jars of it that are years old, and the flavor is still strong. Here is the nutritional and medicinal powerhouse part. Chicory root is one of the richest natural sources of inulin, a powerful prebiotic fiber. Prebiotics feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Just like miso paste, chicory root is a secret weapon for maintaining robust gut health when your diet consists of mostly shelf-stable, processed, or simple foods. Inulin also helps regulate blood sugar, which is critical in stressful times. But the genius of chicory is its use as a coffee substitute. In a long-term grid-down scenario, coffee will disappear fast. Caffeine withdrawal causes debilitating headaches, fatigue, and irritability. Chicory, while caffeine-free, has a deep, earthy, slightly bitter flavor that mimics coffee perfectly. Brewing a cup of hot chicory coffee provides a powerful psychological boost, a feeling of normalcy and comfort. I learned the value of chicory during a 2-week communications blackout. The stress was high and the routine was gone. Just the simple act of brewing a morning cup of hot chicory, which smells and tastes like coffee, was a huge morale stabilizer for everyone. You can also use chicory in cooking. The ground root can be used as a thickener in stews, adding a subtle smoky flavor. The leaves of the chicory plant are edible and nutritious, making it a viable crop for long-term self-sufficiency. The cost is low. A large container of roasted chicory runs about $10. That is hundreds of servings of a morale-boosting, gut health-supporting beverage. I keep 5 large containers in my storage, rotated regularly. Most preppers only stock tea bags, which are a flimsy substitute for the routine of coffee. Chicory provides that dark, rich, comforting routine without the dependence on a disappearing commodity. It is a secret ingredient for maintaining mental and digestive health in a crisis. Food number 17 is dried chlorella powder. Number 17 is the most aggressively nutrient-dense food on this entire list, and it is the one you will almost never hear preppers discuss. Dried chlorella powder. This is a single-celled green algae, often overlooked because it sounds too exotic, but its nutritional profile makes it non-negotiable for serious long-term preppers. Here is what makes chlorella an ultimate survival food. It is 60% protein, making it one of the densest protein sources on the planet. It is loaded with B vitamins, including B12, which is notoriously absent in plant-based survival diets. It contains massive amounts of iron, magnesium, and zinc. But the real kicker is chlorophyll. Chlorella is packed with it, which supports detoxification and oxygenation of the blood. Essential functions when you might be exposed to poor air quality or environmental toxins. The shelf life is extreme. Dried sealed chlorella powder lasts 5 to 10 years, easily. It is an incredibly stable food source. I keep it stored in my freezer in vacuum-sealed packs just to ensure maximum longevity, though room temperature storage is fine. The utility is its concentration. Because it is so nutrient-dense, you only need a small amount, a teaspoon or 2 a day, to provide a massive nutritional safety net. You cannot eat it straight. The taste is intensely green and sea-like, but you do not need to. A teaspoon stirred into a smoothie, mixed into a spoonful of tahini, or blended into a soup masks the flavor completely while delivering a full spectrum of vitamins and minerals. I started stocking chlorella after reviewing the data on long-term nutritional deficiencies in classic survival diets. A diet heavy in grains and legumes will often be deficient in B12, certain trace minerals, and bioavailable iron. Chlorella is the clean, stable, silent solution to those deficiencies. The cost is high per ounce, but low per serving. A 1-pound bag might cost $40, but that is months of a complete nutrient-dense daily supplement. I keep 2 pounds of chlorella in my stockpile. Chlorella is also known to bind to heavy metals, helping the body safely excrete them. In a post-disaster environment where water and air quality could be compromised, this detoxification property is invaluable. Most preppers focus on calories and protein, but the smart prepper focuses on micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that keep your immune system strong, your brain sharp, and your body functional. Chlorella is the micronutrient insurance policy that all serious preppers should be quietly stockpiling. The 17 foods I have just revealed are not just about adding bulk to your pantry. They represent a fundamental shift in the prepper mindset. For too long, the survival community has been obsessed with the 4-pronged approach: rice, beans, wheat, and oats. While these provide calories, the necessary fuel, they fail to provide the sustained nutrition required for long-term health, mental acuity, and morale in a crisis. When the system breaks down, your body becomes your most critical asset. You cannot afford fatigue, low iron, solved with blackstrap molasses and red lentils, brain fog, low omega-3s, solved with sardines, gut failure, lack of probiotics and prebiotics, solved with miso and chicory, or structural breakdown, lack of collagen, solved with gelatin. The foods I have listed are not supplements. They are full-spectrum, shelf-stable nutritional anchors. The core secret that the smartest preppers know is this: stockpile what others ignore. When the panic buyers clear out the rice and canned soup, these 17 items will still be sitting on the shelves. They are unfamiliar, require a slight mental adjustment to use, and are often found in obscure sections of the store. That obscurity is your protection. Go back through this list. Look for the gaps in your current storage. Do you have a quality source of fat that is not cooking oil? Tahini. Do you have a complete gluten-free protein that cooks fast? Amaranth, buckwheat. Do you have your brain food covered? Sardines, dulse. Do you have your gut health insured? Miso, chicory. This is not a shopping list. It is a battle plan. It is the data-driven strategy for emerging from a long-term crisis, not just alive, but healthy, clear-headed, and ready to rebuild. Stop wasting time arguing over the best MRE brand and start stocking the foods that ancient cultures and modern survivalists used to thrive, not just survive. The time for silent preparation is over. The data is clear. Your move